Have you ever been underestimated so badly that you could feel it in every word, every glance, and then one day you got the perfect chance to prove them wrong? That's exactly where 12-year-old Malik Carter found himself on a Thursday afternoon in Jefferson Middle School. The sun spilled in through the classroom windows, painting the scuffed linoleum floor in pale rectangles. Malik sat by the far window, tapping his pencil against his notebook in a steady rhythm. It wasn't nerves. He didn't get nervous easily. It was a habit. One his mother told him he should break, but it helped him think. Across the room, Ms. Victoria Harrington, the teacher who had taught sixth grade for 15 years, stood at the front, flipping through her lesson notes. She was known for her strict but fair reputation, at least to the students she favored. Malik wasn't one of them, not that she openly insulted him. Her discrimination was subtle, too subtle for a principal to catch, but obvious enough that Malik and a few others had noticed. She almost never called on him. If she did, it was usually when she expected him to fail. If he answered correctly, she moved on as if it didn't matter. If he got it wrong, which was rare, she lingered on his mistake just a little too long. One day, Malik's friend Devin Brooks leaned over and whispered, "Yo, she barely even sees you, man. You got teacher invisibility or something." Malik had shrugged it off, saying, "Guess I do." But he knew exactly what Devin meant. That Thursday felt different. Ms. Harrington kept glancing at Malik, not with her usual disinterest, but with something else, something closer to anticipation. The history lesson began, Civil War strategies and campaigns, and Malik kept his head down, writing notes. Then it happened. "Malik," Ms. Harrington said suddenly, her voice sharp but calm. "Why don't you answer this one?" The room went still. She never called on him. Malik straightened in his chair, reading the question on the board. General Sherman's March to the Sea. "It was a military campaign meant to cripple the Confederacy's resources and morale," he answered. His voice was steady. Ms. Harrington's eyebrows arched slightly. "Not bad," she said, and moved on. But something in the air had shifted. When the bell rang, students began packing up, but her voice cut through the chatter. "Malik, stay behind for a moment." A few heads turned. Malik walked slowly to her desk. "I overheard you yesterday," she began, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Talking about your grandfather?" Malik frowned. "What about him? You said he was a musician." He nodded. "A jazz pianist." Her lips curved, not quite into a smile, more like a smirk. "Interesting. So you must have picked up a thing or two." "A little," Malik said carefully. He didn't like where this was going. "Good," she replied and gestured toward the old upright piano in the back corner of the classroom. Its keys were yellowed and chipped. "Tomorrow, you'll play something for the class." Malik stared at her. "Why? Why not? You said your grandfather played. I'm sure you've got some of that talent in you." It wasn't encouragement. It was a setup. Malik could hear it in her tone. She wanted to see him stumble, to humiliate him. And honestly, part of me, as I'm telling you this, thinks she expected Malik to freeze, to refuse, so she could call him unprepared or making excuses. But Malik didn't give her the satisfaction. He just said, "Okay." That night, Malik lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. He could almost hear his grandfather's voice, deep and warm. "Don't ever let them decide who you are before you've had your say, boy." He knew Ms. Harrington thought she had him cornered. She didn't know she'd just lit the match. The next morning, word had spread. Devin grinned as Malik slid into his seat. "So you're a piano guy now?" "There's a lot people don't know," Malik replied. Ms. Harrington began class as usual, but everyone knew what was coming. And 20 minutes before the bell, she closed her book and said the words that changed everything. "Well," she announced, "we have a little time before the next lesson. Malik, let's see what you can do." The classroom air tightened. Whispers darted between desks. Malik stood, walking toward the piano. Someone snickered, but he didn't look to see who. He sat down, ran his fingers over the keys. Out of tune, stiff, but familiar enough. And then he began to play. The first notes floated into the air, soft, smooth, deliberate. Not the clumsy poking they expected, but a rolling blues progression, warm and rich. It wasn't flashy yet, but it was confident. The whispers died instantly. Even the snickering stopped. Every note had weight, and it was like the piano itself came alive under Malik's touch. You have to understand, this wasn't just playing. Malik wasn't copying a song from memory. He was telling a story, one his grandfather had told him through music since he was 5 years old. A story of humid Arkansas nights, screen doors swinging, the scent of magnolia in the air, and the deep sound of a man's hands coaxing life from old ivory keys. Miss Harrington's arms were crossed, but her head tilted just slightly, as if she was trying to figure out how this was happening. Malik's left hand kept a steady bass line. His right hand began to weave a melody on top, clean, quick, and controlled. He didn't look up, didn't need to. He wasn't playing for them. He was playing for himself and for his grandfather. Then, with no warning, he shifted gears. The chords got deeper, fuller. The tempo climbed. His hands moved so fast across the keys that the chipped ivory blurred. It wasn't a child fumbling through a recital piece. This was the kind of sound you'd expect from a professional sitting under a spotlight at a smoky jazz club at 2 a.m. A ripple went through the class. Devin's jaw literally dropped. Even Brandon, the loudmouth who never missed a chance to make fun of someone, was sitting forward in his seat, arms crossed tight, eyes locked on Malik's hands. I'm telling you, if you've ever been in a moment where someone completely shatters your expectations, you could feel what that room was feeling. Ms. Harrington's face shifted again. The smugness drained. Now she just looked unsettled. Malik built toward the crescendo, hammering out a rapid-fire run of notes his grandfather had drilled into him for years. It was the hardest piece in his personal collection, something he'd once sworn he'd never master. But tonight, he wasn't just playing it. He was owning it. The final chord rang out like a bell. The sound lingered, hung in the air, before melting into silence. Malik's fingers rested on the keys for a beat, then fell to his lap. The room stayed quiet for 3 whole seconds, which in middle school time is an eternity. Then Devin clapped. Once, twice. Someone else joined. And then it was the entire class, clapping, cheering, even whistling. Everyone except Miss Harrington. Her arms were still crossed, her face unreadable. That was unexpected, she said finally, her tone clipped. Brandon from the back scoffed. Unexpected? That was insane. You act like that's no big deal. This is a classroom, not a talent show, she said sharply. Malik turned toward her. You didn't think I could play, did you? His voice was calm, not disrespectful, just certain. Her eyes flickered, but she held his gaze. I gave you an opportunity. No, Malik interrupted, still calm. You gave me a setup. You wanted me to fail. The air in the room got heavy. Some kids looked from him to her like they were watching a live boxing match. Sit down, Malik, she said. For the first time all year, Malik didn't move. He looked at the classmates who'd ignored him, the ones who had written him off, the ones who'd smirked when his name was called. Then slowly, he stood from the piano and walked back to his seat, not as the quiet kid in the back row, but as someone they couldn't overlook anymore. Ms. Harrington tried to carry on with the lesson, but the rhythm was gone. The authority she wielded so effortlessly now had cracks in it. By the time the bell rang, Malik knew, and so did everyone else, that something had shifted permanently. The hallway after the bell was buzzing. Malik could feel eyes on him as he slung his backpack over his shoulder. Some students were whispering, others just looked at him differently, like they'd never really seen him before today. He was almost out the door when Ms. Harrington's voice cut through the noise. Malik! He turned. For a split second, it looked like she might say something genuine, maybe even admit she'd been wrong. But the softness vanished. I hope you understand, she said, her tone crisp. This is still my classroom. Malik held her gaze. I know, he said, steady as stone. And I hope you understand. You'll never be able to pretend I'm invisible again. Her jaw tightened. She didn't reply. Malik walked away, the sound of her silence echoing behind him. At lunch, something happened Malik hadn't expected. Students who'd never spoken to him before stopped by his table. Madison, a girl who usually ignored him, leaned forward with wide eyes. How long have you been playing like that? Since I was 5, Malik said with a small shrug. Devin grinned. Man, you've been holding out on us. From across the cafeteria, Ms. Harrington walked past, tray in hand. Their eyes met. This time, she was the one who looked away first. And here's the thing. She might never admit it out loud. People like that rarely do. But in her mind, the narrative had cracked. She couldn't unhear what she'd heard, couldn't unsee what she'd seen. That evening, Malik walked home under the warm orange glow of the setting sun. The air smelled faintly of fried catfish drifting from a nearby diner. When he stepped into his house, the real scent hit. Cornbread and catfish on the stove. His mom, Angela Carter, turned from the frying pan. You're home late. Had a long day, he said, dropping his bag. Good or bad? He thought about it. About the way the class had fallen silent. The way Ms. Harrington had looked. Not powerful, not in control, but shaken. The way his classmates' faces had shifted from disbelief to awe. Good, he said finally. Really good. Angela wiped her hands on a towel and sat across from him. Want to talk about it? For the next 15 minutes, Malik told her everything. Every glance, every note, every moment. She listened without interrupting, pride flickering in her eyes. When he finished, she reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Sounds like you made her uncomfortable, she said softly. I think I did. And how do you feel about that? Malik didn't even hesitate. Like it was supposed to happen. Her smile was slow, but it reached her eyes. Good. The next day, things were different. Not in a movie magic way where bullies turned into best friends overnight, but in subtle, undeniable ways. People nodded at him in the hallway. Kids he didn't know by name stopped to say, "That was amazing yesterday." Even Brandon, loud, arrogant Brandon, muttered, "Yo, you're legit," before walking off like it killed him to admit it. And Ms. Harrington? She still taught the same way, still favored the same students. But every time her eyes passed over Malik, there was a flicker, a reminder of the day she tried to box him in, and he broke the walls instead. Here's what sticks with me about Malik's story. He could have refused. He could have played something safe, or let his nerves sabotage him. But instead, he met prejudice head-on. Not with anger, not with begging for respect, but with undeniable proof of his worth. When you do that, when you let your gift speak so loudly that it drowns out their doubts, they can't take it back. They can ignore you, but they can't unknow you. That's the part Ms. Harrington will carry forever. And maybe, just maybe, one day she'll think twice before she decides who's worthy of her attention. Because on that Thursday morning, in a dusty classroom in Arkansas, a 12-year-old boy taught everyone in that room something no textbook ever could. When they try to reduce you to a stereotype, make sure your talent tells a story they'll never forget. If you're watching this right now and you've ever been underestimated, maybe this is your sign. Don't waste time trying to convince them with words. Let your skills, your kindness, your persistence be so loud they can't help but hear you. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is making them listen.